Good afternoon and welcome to this ADA Title II Town Hall. I'm Alex Lukowski, AVP of Communications. I'll take a moment and consider this woman's observation. There are things in PDFs that I can't see as a visually enabled person that they hear in the screen reader. You can hear the screen reader saying something like header, 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 because it sees all this data in the margins that shouldn't be there. It can be a jumbled mess. Now, that quote comes from Corey Tressler, Assistant Dean for Technology and Digital Programs at Ohio State University Libraries. Tressler was interviewed for a recent article on Inside Higher Ed titled, Higher Ed Prepares for a New Era of Accessibility. She was describing just one sliver of the challenge facing universities, which, along with all state and local government agencies, must come into compliance next month with federally mandated accessibility standards. Now, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 requires all employers to make reasonable accommodations to employees with any of a wide array of disabilities, and it mandates accessibility requirements for public accommodations. Now, the law has been considered to cover technology access in many ways for years, but in 2024, the Justice Department issued final rules specific to web content and mobile applications. For state and local government agencies like ours, it means meeting the standards set forth in the latest iteration of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. I'll let the experts explain what that means. But on the government's ADA website, there are examples like this one that help explain the problem. Individuals who are blind may use a screen reader to deliver visual information on a website or mobile app as speech. A state or local government might post an image on its website that provides information to the public. Now, if the website does not include text describing the image, sometimes called alt text, individuals who are blind and who use screen readers may have no way of knowing what is in the image because a screen reader cannot read that image. Non-compliant PDF files are clearly a huge problem. There are thousands of PowerPoint slides and information graphics filling up our websites that are in no way compliant with federal law. And video recordings are another problem area. They need to be captioned properly and often require audio descriptions for visually impaired users. It's going to take a lot of effort to fix what's already out there, and it'll take a little extra time when we create new content going forward. But it's really the only way to ensure that everyone, regardless of ability, is able to fully participate in UMB's academic and community life. So it isn't just the law that requires equitable access, but also our own core values. And as I think you'll hear in the discussion today, most of the requirements can be met just by doing things like explaining what's on the screen and speaking clearly. In other words, just by being considerate of other people's different abilities. Now, here to explain everything today is one of the co-chairs of the UMB Title II Task Force, HSHSL Dean Emily Hurst. She's joined by a very knowledgeable group of Title II Task Force members, two of my colleagues from Communications and Public Affairs, Amir Chamzas and Charles Shalee, Ann Kim from Educational Support and Disability Services, Becky Menendez from the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, Shannon Tucker, Assistant Dean of Instructional Design and Technology, and Tricia Kaufman from the Center for Information Technology Services. In a moment, we'll hear from the panel, and then a little later, they'll answer your questions. And many of you have already submitted questions when you registered for this event. You can also write your questions in the Q&A section at any time. So please do that, and we'll be ready to answer them. Now, please welcome Dean Emily Hurst, and I should note that co-chair Christina Sestone could not be here today.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm getting my screen up to share. That looks good. And thank you so much for that gracious introduction. You said that I was going to tell you everything about digital accessibility. I'm going to tell you all a lot about digital accessibility today. There's always more to learn, and I continue to learn even as part of this town hall and even with the task force work. So please keep that in mind today as well. And yes, Christina sends her regards. She is sorry that she cannot be here, but she does have some treatment that she's undergoing right now that keeps her away from us. But she has continued to be very active and a guiding light for us in digital accessibility. So I know that we are looking into a few things with chat, but hopefully you'll hear from my colleagues in the chat as we go through today. I am your Associate Vice Provost and Dean for the Health Sciences and Human Services Library. And as you saw from that wonderful piece that Alex selected as well, libraries are very interested in accessibility and ensuring that students as well as the public have access to the resources that they need, and especially here in higher education. So just diving right in, today's presentation, we are going going to go over and hopefully answer a lot of the questions for you today. You've already been introduced to my wonderful panelists. I'll also show you a slide with our task force. Then we will discuss what Title II is and what is digital accessibility. We'll explain why this is happening now and what we can do to prepare for these priority areas. What has UMB done so far? We'll address that. And what does Title II and digital accessibility mean for you? We will give you some takeaways during this section. It will be brief compared to all the information we're going to be sharing with you today, but the important thing to know is that you have a lot of resources at your hands here at UMB, and we want you to be connected to those to get more information, including learning about training, which many people have asked for, and we'll be taking questions later about that. And also, again, looking at our experts, who can help, what are the resources that you need to be successful? We'll be looking at those things. And last but not least, and especially the most important, we'll be diving into your direct questions. And I know that some of you may have already heard from me or Christina. We have been making rounds throughout the campus, already giving some of our presentations. This presentation today is informed by the questions that you've sent in, as well as the experts that we have on our panel today. So it's a little bit more robust than some of those that we have presented to some of the other groups thus far. Again, these are your panelists, and we have a wonderful array of representation across the board from many different units and departments. And we do have many different school representatives on our task force. I do want to mention Shannon was invited to be here today. They had to duke it out, if you will. We just wanted to have one school person here because we have representatives that are passionate about this and working on this in each of their schools. But for today's panel, Shannon is representing the instructional designers, especially from the School of Pharmacy. And then moving on to our task force, this is our group that continues to meet regularly. And as you can see, we have a wide variety of representation. And we also have guests come to our meetings. So if you are someone that's leading in this area or someone that's working in Title II or digital accessibility and would like to come to one of our meetings, you are welcome to we'll take your request and potentially you can come to one of our task force meetings. We continue to have lots of guests come in, and we have a wonderful team that is working with us from across the campus. So thank you to them for all of their insights and preparation today. All right, so been waiting for this. What is a Title II? So we're abbreviating this concept of Title II. It is the Title II regulation of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the ADA. And you have a link here that will take you into one of our newly designed pages on digital accessibility that really puts into plain language what Title II addresses. Title II is really concerned with the concept of mobile and web accessibility guidance. And at this university level, we are really focused on the public and student-facing content. And so back in 1990, if you can remember, websites that were starting to develop and think the dot-com era was getting going in the 1990s, websites were very different than what they are today. So this guidance and these regulations have continued to evolve over time. And while we are talking about web accessibility and mobile applications, the thing that we need to also keep in mind is that we have a lot of electronic documents, which are described here as conventional electronic documents that get posted to our websites. And this Title II regulation is really also addressing websites as well as those formats that might include PDFs, word processor file formats, presentations like our wonderful PDF, our PowerPoint, and spreadsheets, as well as other file formats that might exist and get posted online. So this is just an important little distinction about how Title II is impacting your work today. And again, we expect the website to continue, the web of tomorrow to continue to evolve. So we continue to monitor this and look at how individuals with different abilities need to have access to the ways that we are using our new electronic documents, videos, et cetera, in order to get the information that they're looking for. And so we talk about Title II, but we also talk about this concept of digital accessibility. And so throughout today's presentation, while we are the Title II task force, we are really kind of translating a lot of that into this concept of digital accessibility. And I'm just gonna go over what the purpose of digital accessibility is, but it ensures, as Alex has already mentioned, that people with different abilities can access and use digital content and technologies equally and effectively. It ensures that individuals that are using assistive technologies like screen readers can get into the content without getting those header comments. They're able to read a document with their screen reader, just like someone with a sighted person can read a document in front of them. And the purpose of digital accessibility, again, is that equality and use that aligns with our core values. There's also this legal component, right, that comes with digital accessibility today. When we start talking about Title II, that is a legal requirement. It's an act of ADA, and it mandates that web content, software apps, mobile apps, and digital materials for state and local governments that serve the public, our student users, must be accessible. And so we are here at a state-funded institution in the state of Maryland, and we really need to be focused on the state users, including the public and the student users, to make sure that we are aligning with the legal requirements of Title II. And I've already mentioned this, I get ahead of myself sometimes, so sorry about that. Assistive technologies include those screen readers as well as other tools that remove these barriers to accessing digital content. So we have to keep those technologies in mind as we work with digital materials to create digitally accessible content. And accessibility standards. This is the place to go to and look when we've fielded a lot of questions that have to do with like, well, what is the minimum I have to do? The accessibility standards that come from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or the WCAG 2.1 AA, are where to look. This is section 508. It provides frameworks for creating legally compliant, accessible digital documents. And again, this section 508 has been around for quite a while, and it continues to evolve as we get new digital types of content, but it is a wonderful place to go and look at these WCAG guidelines to find out the minimum legally required steps to take in order to create digitally accessible content. Now, why is this happening now? I know that is also a question that's hot on everybody's mind. And the short answer is that in April 2024, the United States Department of Justice issued the Title II rule for the web and mobile accessibility, and it established compliance deadlines. Because we are a state-funded institution, and we are serving a population that's over 50,000 people, and we're also looking at the entirety of USM together. Our deadline is April 24th, 2026. Those were set by the US Department of Justice back in 2024. The other things that, we're bringing awareness about this today and now, and the reason why you're hearing more about it, because as we move closer to April, we want to make sure that people are aware that after April, we're looking at ensuring that digital accessibility is in place, not only for the materials that are currently out there, but for anything else that you create. This becomes the new standard after April 24th. So there's a lot to learn about how we create documents and how we create materials for the public and students that we need to start learning and adapting to today. The reason for this is because with this Department of Justice ruling at the federal level, this means that there are the potentials for federal penalties should we not become compliant within the time period that they have asked. We also open ourselves up. We create risk at the university level to individual lawsuits that may come toward the university because of the non-compliance that if we don't meet digital accessibility standards. And then another important fact that I've been asked to just mention is that, we're an institution of higher education, and serving students, we want to make sure that students are able to access and achieve their trajectory in their courses. We want them to graduate on time. We want them to be effective professionals. And so this is something that we really have to take into consideration when it comes to the risks that are there. We want students to be able to access content and be productive and finish their time with us here at UMB. Just 1 second. So sorry about that. I realize I'm in Zoom and not Teams. All right, so sorry about that. All right, priority areas for us to discuss today and to keep in mind as we go throughout this is that we are really looking at websites and publicly available digital content that includes live events and public-facing files. So again, we just went over all those different file formats. Those are included here, but we're looking at things that are publicly available and the websites, of course, that are publicly available. Secondary in our priority list, but just as important, are items and materials that exist in our learning management system in the LMS. This is digital content that is used for education and therefore must be compliant. This includes, again, audio and video media, webinars that might be used in class instruction, as well as linked third-party content and files used for instruction or required reading. So our students and our public are the two main areas that we're really focused on as the priority for Title II compliance. We're also looking at mobile apps and digital systems that are used by the public or by students to access services or to use campus services. Sorry about that. And then the other area that's occurring currently that we'll talk a little bit later about how this impacts you is that there is a review of third-party tools that are used by the public and students that is currently going on by our folks at SITS, looking into the tools that we already license and work with, making sure that they can meet these Title II requirements, and then looking at potential recommendations. So there is another area there that has review because we have a lot of third-party vendors that we work with, whether it be in the library or in OCPA. There's a lot of people using tools that come from vendors, and we're using them for public and for student purposes. So we really need to make sure that they are able to be compliant as well. All right. And then what has UMB done so far, just so that we have everything out there? In December of last year, we had the Title II Task Force, which Christina and I have been leading, meeting regularly. This group has worked on a number of things, including looking at a university-wide planning you're here at this webinar today. We've talked about communications. We've talked about, the governance structure that's in place and made recommendations there. And we continue to look for opportunities to enlighten and share more information about Title II, as well as help people move forward in this new landscape. In the future, we expect that there will be some recommendations that the Title II Task Force makes for continued compliance and accessibility here on the campus after the time period that the task force is running for. The task force has also worked with other individuals outside of the task force to identify materials that are inaccessible and the tools that are needed for remediation. There are a lot of tools out there that can help for this, so we've been really looking at the task force to make sure that we're making sound judgments and recommendations to leadership about investments that might need to happen in this area. In addition, schools, departments, and even individuals have been working on creating accessible environments for the public and for students in many different ways, which we'll hear about in a little further in the presentation. And then finally, ongoing, just the creation of training resources and opportunities. Training is so important, and we want people to know that the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, there's a Title II work group, as well as the University System of Maryland has a lot of training that is coming out and something that people should be interested in attending or looking into. And then the big takeaway from the task force and from UNB that we want people to know about is that what's going to happen with the future for digital accessibility and what we can do together is really important, because accessibility is becoming a digitally created content and hosted content is everyone's responsibility. So we're really looking to create a community and work together on this so that we can ensure that the public as well as students have access to everything they need to be successful and to use our services here at UNB. All right, and I'm going to dive into a wonderful resource here in just a moment. I do want to check to see if there's anything in the chat I need to respond to immediately. Can somebody let me know if there's anything in there?
I think we just have lots of specific questions popping up about what people need to do or not need to do. So we can probably just get to all at once.
Okay, great. I will go ahead and Shannon's put in the chat for you all. This is our #1 resource that the task force has also worked on and put together. This is our digital accessibility website for the University of Maryland, Baltimore, which I am going to open now. We're going to do just a little brief navigation so you can see some of the ways that we have compiled content and that we have put a lot of thought into making sure that you have access to the materials that will hopefully help you create digitally accessible content. So let me make sure, yes, it is going to the right place. Perfect. Everybody can see the slide, yeah, or the website? Love it. Okay. And this is the product of a lot of work that has gone in by not just members of our task force, but Amir Kasim is here, so he'll be able to answer some questions as well. But we have taken feedback from across the campus to build out this website. And again, we have looked at our colleagues as well at the other USMs, University System of Maryland institutions, to make sure that we're also kind of following some of the things that they're doing. And I would say we have a very robust site here that continues to evolve, and we hear your feedback, we hear updates, and we make changes to this website. So there's little tabs that will take you into some of the ways to get started. I do want to scroll down just to show you that a lot of the content I've covered is already right here. What is digital accessibility? As we scroll down to also Title II, this is the area I'm most interested to show you, which is our resources and training section, because what we have tried to do is divvy these up so that you can go in based on your role, whether or not you're a researcher, a staff, or a faculty member. And once you're into those little headers, you're able to find out a little bit more about some of the exact things that may be of interest to you and to answer some of your more specific questions. Links to guidance and ways to get started. We've also got some nice little easy to navigate areas that take you into things like documents, how to create your accessible documents for course materials. And again, lots of sessions that you can sign up for, or recorded lectures, which are another way that you can, oh, I'm sorry, I don't think that's what I'm looking for, that link. But sorry, there's a lot of links for training. Let me go back to that section. In here, you'll be able to find access to recordings as well as materials that are currently ongoing, so you can sign up for some of the courses that are available. And just getting started starts right here. We have creating accessible content, how to fix and test with accessibility tools, and again, training resources. I keep stressing that. I cannot stress it enough. Training is very essential in this area. And I do want to go back up to the top. I want to show one more aspect of the site before I leave. We do have standards and policies as well. Again, if you come across a really great tool or resource, please do not hesitate to contact us. We will be happy to review it. And if it meets what we feel is appropriate, we can make sure it gets added to our growing list of resources. So we're crowdsourcing some of this with you all as well. So right here, pages in this section, we have a link that says contact. So there's been a lot of questions about who should I follow up with? How do I get information after, the April deadline? We're still going to be around. We still have a lot of people that have a passion and an interest in ensuring digital accessibility. So for this website, you have a link to the site owners, assistants for students, and assistants for staff, assistants for faculty. It takes you right into Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, and governance and collaboration. I want to go up right here to site owners contacts. So this is where you'll see Amira and Trisha, members of our task force, and really been working in a lot of the information and reviewing the content that is here on our site. And then we also have contacts for each of your schools. So individuals that are looking for information specifically to areas like nursing can contact Giordana, who's part of our task force. And of course, if we have other members from other schools as well, we can help facilitate, contacting, getting you the correct information for your school if you have specific questions there. So that is a brief overview of the website that I do want to make sure everyone is aware of. And we hope to see, traffic spike on this website after today's webinar. And we do appreciate your feedback as we continue to this evolving landscape of digital accessibility. We hope that these tools and resources and training will be useful and essential as you begin this path. All right, back to our slides, digital accessibility website. And then looking at some takeaways for today, we had a lot of questions about this, and it's wonderful to see that there's so much interest in digital access. And the thing that I want to point out for today's webinar, everyone has very unique questions. I'm going to try to give some high-level things today, but I do encourage all of you to, of course, put your questions in chat. We will get to those as much as we can, but there will still be questions that I mean, I still get questions on digital accessibility and I have to know who to contact. And that's why I want to make sure people have the resources today. But I'm just going to go over a few bullet points here and on my next slide to just show you some simple things and steps that you can take to have digital accessibility be part of your life starting today. Of course, training, I've already mentioned that. So please sign up for a training or review recorded training content. If you are going to a training, I highly recommend that if you're going to a training for a specific product, like if it's for Microsoft Word, maybe bring a Word document with you. Learn as you go. Use something that you've already created so that when you leave that training session, you are already remediated one document or you made a digitally accessible document. And then hopefully some of those things will stick with you as well. Also, talk to your colleagues in your school or department about digital accessibility plans and activities. We find that we learn so much from each other that we have to really start creating communities and connecting with one another about this topic. Working together to secure training or creating an action plan can go a long way. And again, you can invite Christina, you can invite myself or other members of the task force. We are happy to come to your department or school meetings and talk a little bit more about accessibility with you. And then, as Alex mentioned, the header comment for that screen reader. So that has to do with using appropriate formatting when you're creating content. And there are easy ways to do that. Obviously, you can learn more about the Microsoft products that we use. But what's really great about Microsoft is that they have a built-in accessibility checker and linked. There's the quick way to find it. It's under the review tab. So review, check accessibility, and you'll get some results from Microsoft that'll tell you a little bit more about how to put those headers in or how to change that format so that you can have an accessible document. Also, another one that has been around for a while, so people might have heard about this one, and that is using alternative text for images. If I were to have an image on this PowerPoint, I would want to right-click on that image when I'm creating it, and then there will be an option to add some alternative text where I describe that image and why it's being used here or why it's meaningful for the content that I have on my slide for that day. And then again, if you're using spreadsheets get a little bit more complicated for me. This is the one I always have to ask for help in, but reviewing headings, tables, rows, columns, columns, and forms, making sure that everything is properly structured. And this also includes some of our form software as well. So that proper structuring goes a long way for the use in screen readers. And just as an FYI for those watching today, you'll see that this title of this slide is the same as the previous, but I have a thing that says continued. That is an important aspect of digital accessibility, making sure that each of your slides has a unique title. And if the content does need to continue, you put continued on it. So the individuals using a screen reader know that this comes under the same heading as the previous. So just some fun takeaways for today. Also remembering that if you're in Zoom and Teams, you'll want to turn on that closed caption or transcription. And we have more information for you about how to create those totally accessible webinars and things like that. They get more nuanced, but having those turned on is very helpful for some of our users. You also want to check all your websites and subdomains for these PDFs or other non-compliant documents, audio or visual materials. So while our task force and our team has looked at the highest level, you may still have some other things on some subdomains, et cetera, that need some accessibility and might need remediation. And trying to identify those is an important first step to take. Obviously, we want to make sure that our public users and our students have all the accessibility they need to join us here at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. So we want to make sure that our admissions pages, our events, our news pages, so people can find out about us, are up to date with Title II. Those are important places that you can start looking. Obviously, work with your leaders in your school to ensure accessible content. That might be all the way up to your dean level, like myself, or it may include your instructional designers. Working with them to learn more can go a very long way. And I added a last one here. I should have put this one up further. This is actually a takeaway for you all as well. But for websites or even for PowerPoints like this, we're going to ask that people start using descriptive links. That's actually part of a 508 compliant that's been around for quite a while. But we're asking people to use meaningful and descriptive text that indicates the purpose or destination of the link. on websites in particular. So vague language like click here or read more is not really the best for Title II accessibility. We really want people to know, well, what is that I'm clicking on? Where am I going? Where am I being taken before they click here? All right, so those were the fun takeaways, notes for you all to work with. This is my impact report that I do want to mention here about the third-party vendors. So again, our folks at SITS are working very hard to review our license agreements to ensure that when we license a third-party tool or product for use with students or the public, that it meets or it can meet accessibility standards. So this is actually taking some of the review process in the procurement process a little bit longer. So thank you for your patience. If you are one of the people that are caught waiting for something to be approved, it is most likely because we're doing our due diligence to ensure that everyone has access to what they need to be successful. And changes are expected as some of the vendors are not able to meet accessibility standards. We will be obviously SITS, or you'll hear from your procurement office whether or not those purchases can be made. I can tell you we do have products that we are currently licensing that we will most likely have to change or go with a different vendor on in the future, and we will be providing guidance on that once those decisions are made and other products are determined and other third-party vendors are contracted with. All right, I've talked a little bit about the pain points of digital accessibility, but let's talk about the benefits because there are a great many of them. I'm only listing 4 of them here, but I think if we really start thinking about this, the benefits far outweigh the hardship, if you will, of getting started with digital accessibility. So digital accessibility is designed to lower the barrier of entry and access to content for all members of the public and students. That means that anyone should be able to access our University of Maryland, Baltimore content without having to ask for something to be remediated. They should be able to dive right in and get access to what they need to be successful in our programs. It also demonstrates, I think this is an important one for me, having been here at the university now for 3 years. This university is very committed to our core values, and this is clearly encompassed in what Title II is and what it is meant to do. It is meant to create that accessible, inclusive environment that we value so much here at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Also, an important fact that I think we all need to keep in mind is that while this has been in place for a very long time, if you will, going back to the 1990s, these are now at the level where this is the best practice standards. This is what is this is going to be the requirement at any university that is of higher education and that's public. It's something that is the best practice. And if you're becoming an expert in this area and able to do digital accessibility to the highest degree, you are one of the leaders in this area and can continue to go out and make that known to others. So it is a best practice, and we want our individuals working here at the University of Maryland, Baltimore to be purveyors of that best practice standard. And last but not least, I think this goes back to the very beginning, wrapping it all together. Once we make our content public accessible, it becomes more widely available to users because we're not looking at people that only have specific abilities being able to access something. We're looking at universal design in the future where everyone's able to access our content, and we become leaders compared to some of our peers potentially because we're taking this seriously and we're going to have more content being read and reviewed by many other, have more eyes on it, if you will, than others. All right, moving into the training and support, which I have mentioned as a very important aspect of this. There are a lot of training opportunities and workshops and online modules that are taking place all around, online as well as in person. And we'll have some links for you and a few other slides, but the University System of Maryland Corwin Center has been doing a lot for their online workshops, and our own Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning has put on some very specific training sessions for here at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Other things that you may want to consider as we look at training and support, I'm looking at this here in the library, include annual refreshers and even onboarding sessions. So when we bring in new hires here for the HSHSL, we'll be talking to them about the expectation of meeting Title II and making sure that accessibility training is built into the onboarding process that we'll be using. And last but not least, again, this is something that you cannot be achieving overnight. So you have to seek support from the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, the HSHSL. We'll have Ann Kim is on our panel. We'll talk about ESDS here in a moment, school instructional designers and peers. Finding that support network is going to help you be successful with Title II standards. And since I've mentioned Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, and Becky is on our panel today, just to show a few more ways that you can connect if you're a faculty member, and even staff, I believe, can work with the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning if they are creating course content. But this just goes over a little bit more of obviously their role in digital accessibility. That includes promoting awareness of accessibility requirements. They are very keen and aware of everything that we've been talking about today and can help you make sense of this in light of your teaching role. They're also monitoring and communicating Blackboard Ally scores, specifically for the School of Graduate Studies courses. But if you have questions about Blackboard Ally, your instructional designers at your schools or the FCTL may be able to tell you more about how to use that product to ensure that your course content is getting the accessibility requirements in place. They're also they're providing accessible templates for syllabi and course content. This is a great way to get started with these accessibility requirements, is have some templates that are already built out and have the accessibility checked, and you just have to fill the content in. Some things that can help us in the future when you're creating new content or even remediating content. The Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning is also developing training, resources, and guides. So they have a lot of materials that are linked from our digital accessibility primary guide that I showed you at the beginning, but you can also visit their website to see and learn more from them. And they have accessibility working sessions and office hours. Again, great time to bring your very specific questions or documents and work with them to get things accessible and learn the skills to have to ensure that your material is continued to be accessible in the future. And they're also providing consults and guidance or referrals to other specialists. So sometimes it is that one-on-one time that you need with a specialist in this area, and they're happy to work with you or refer you on to other people who may be able to help you achieve digital accessibility. And then just looking at Ann Kim and the role of the Educational Services and Disability Services, their role in Title II. We've talked a lot about Title II. We have not talked about this concept of student accommodations. Title II does not impact any of this. Students may still seek accommodations. That is just a higher level way of ensuring that the content is accessible for the student in the course of the classroom. Of course, seeking an accommodation is not a requirement. So individuals that are in your course should be able to access all content because of Title II. Seeking accommodations is an option that they still have available to them, but it's just a matter of nuance here that with Title II, we really hope that all students have access to what they need and can work again with ESDS if they choose to. Students are also encouraged to provide feedback on digital accessibility to the Title II Task Force or through the contacts that we have provided on that website. We are looking at what will happen after the task force goes away to ensure that students can still report or request support when they need it, specifically in the classroom, even for students that may not have accommodations. And then last but not least, from ESDS, faculty must integrate Title II changes and approved accommodations in course design and delivery. So ESDS will work directly with faculty when that has been requested. So they will be working specifically on those approved accommodations and making those changes when necessary. All right, I've mentioned this already. The University System of Maryland has been leading these efforts in some regard for quite a while. And the Kirwan Center is the place for you to visit and learn more about. They have some really great recordings. They have some great sessions and support groups that I think are essential for people to know about. They have this accessibility hub, which is linked here. And from there, you can go into their previous training, and they have some, I think they still have some upcoming training remaining. We're going to keep doing training on this. So I know that they're going to have some, they call them sprints, where you can actually bring a document and you learn how to remediate it and learn the accessibility aspects of creating a document with them throughout the course of the presentation. They also have a collaborative working group, which includes representatives from all 12 campuses working on digital accessibility. And we have representatives from University of Maryland, Baltimore there, and we get feedback from them and learn a little bit more about what the system level is thinking about. And last but not least, they do have a faculty develop program that helps on remediating materials and tools for teaching and learning. Again, all of this can be found in their digital accessibility hub from the link provided here. And then additional resources for the UMB community. We do want to make sure, again, number one, please bookmark it, is the digital accessibility website. We have gone over just a brief overview of that today, and we'll be happy to answer questions following the presentation. Also, the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, please visit their website. The link provided here takes you directly into their digital accessibility resources and guides and upcoming training. Kirwan Center was just mentioned. This is, again, the link to the Digital Accessibility Hub from the University System of Maryland. And then again, looking at additional resources continued, we have our final slide just to remind you of all the other resources that are at your fingertips, all the people that can support you in this, including, this one is not a full link, but your instructional designers and educational technologists within your school are going to be your allies in a lot of this work. So please look for your school specific teams and learn more about what kind of training and what kind of support they can provide. Come to the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, again, for training, resources, and consultations. I'm not sure why there's a question mark on those two, but we'll figure that out. Educational Support and Disability Services is linked here, and Kim and her team or herself can provide more information on educational support and disability services through their program. The Office of Communication and Public Affairs, Communications and Public Affairs, OCPA, has a web team. They have office hours, so any of you that have publicly facing content can work with that web team and get some updates on how to adjust your websites as necessary. Working with OCPA has been a pleasure. They are definitely helping us with a lot of our public facing content. Strategic sourcing and acquisition services. This is the third-party procurement and accessibility assessments. This link will take you in to learn more about that and potentially ask you some follow-up questions that can help fast track us in some cases to get some of those procurement things moving forward more quickly, because there are some very specific questions that the SITS team has to answer, and trying to find that information is sometimes difficult. But sometimes you as the expert may know where to find it. Second to last here, you've got my group, which is the libraries, not only the HSHSL, but the Thurgood Marshall Law Library. We are very interested in ensuring that the resources that we are licensing and the content that students are using in their classroom or that individuals may need access to are accessible. So please come to us. We have librarians that are actively engaged in digital accessibility and interested in working with faculty to ensure that students have what they need. And of course, if you have legal questions, I have to have a nice thanks to Alex Hortis as well. He has been our representation on the task force for Title II and providing us a lot of guidance for what does Title II mean and the legal frameworks for this document. So you are welcome to contact University Counsel if you have additional follow-up legal questions for them. I am not an attorney, and I do not play one on today's webinar. And this is my final thoughts and takeaways that we've talked about quite a bit, but just so that we bring it all back around to the Title II Task Force. We're a very supportive group, and I know that UMB, as well as the Title II Task Force, is supportive of efforts to improve digital accessibility for the public and students. You all would have received an email from the provost not too long ago supporting exactly this, and I continue to encourage units and schools to embrace digital accessibility accessibility and find paths forward. And digital accessibility is the accessibility of digitally created and hosted content is everyone's responsibility. But I think as we've addressed here today, please ask for help and support. Together, we can work toward this, and we're looking for an accessible future, not only in April of this year, but in the years to come. We definitely have a lot to learn, all of us, and I think that working together, we can get there more quickly. And remember to embrace those UMB core values. And that, I've got to figure out how I stop sharing. Oh, it's over here. Stop share. All right. Thank you for bearing with me on my presentation. For those of you that have seen it before, you will have noticed there are additional content added today. Anything that we're ready to dive right into? We've got the panel up and here to talk to you.
You know, Emily, the audience is clearly champing at the bit. We've got, 30 open questions now.
Great.
So, in the spirit of time, two of them come from Amanda Habib at the School of Medicine. So, Amanda, do you want to start us off and talk about your questions? Go ahead and open your mic.
Oops. You guys hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Okay. My first question is about plain language. I know that's the Plain Language Act is a guideline that a lot of communicators strive to implement in their work, but I wasn't sure if our accessibility requirements have any specific guidelines or regulations requiring us to use plain language in content we put on the web.
I can answer that. So we do have guidelines and best practices for web writing, and it definitely fits there. There isn't any accessibility requirement for plain language. Accessibility, as we talk about it, follows a very specific set of standards, which is WCAG 2.1 AA. Those are the very specifics that we need to follow in order to make sure content is accessible. Plain language is not one of those. So it's not in the scope of accessibility, but it's definitely something that we want. We have been working on it. We have like a very specific language. It's not a requirement, but a guideline on our website. It fits more in the user experience and best practices for content for the web.
Thank you, Amir. And then my last question, I know in the beginning of the session, Dean Hurst mentioned that we're primarily focusing accessibility efforts on content directed towards external audiences and students, but I didn't know if these also applied to any internal or intranet content.
I can try to answer that. But before doing so, I just want to take a step back. I see there is a lot of questions about that. I want to talk to everybody here why we are doing this. Accessibility is in order to provide equal access to information for people with all abilities. Okay, there is a specific law. There is requirements when it comes to law, which I'm going to get into in a second. But let's keep in mind, like the purpose is to allow everybody in the community to access information. And that's a value that we want to pursue. Law is the very minimum that we have to abide by. And there is a deadline for it. It's the April 24th. And for that, yeah, the scope is information that are for students and for the public. Okay, so that is the scope of Title II. We're not saying you don't have to do anything about any other aspects of web content or digital content. By all means, we want to have a long-term plan for those, but the minimum which law requires us to be abiding by the April 24th deadline is information that is applicable to students and public-facing content on the websites. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You know, in line with that, another attendee wrote, and you probably saw this, Amir, Is it correct that the rule applies only to web content and mobile apps? Data shared via other means, like email, is not subject to the rule? That's a question. And the second part of that question, this goes along with what you were saying. Please provide a list of exceptions like archived material, outdated PDFs, password protected documents, pre-existing social media. What are the exceptions to the things that we need to remediate?
Yeah, so it applies. So Title II applies to all content, like LMS. That was one of the slides that Emily shared. Content which is for students, and it's in an environment. It's a platform. Any platforms that are used for students to learn, they are included. Any platforms that are provided to the public to access any of the UMB services, programs, or activities, it's covered. So it's not just websites. It's anything that interfaces the public or the students. Now, in terms of exceptions, the DOJ has defined a set of exceptions, and they are on their website if you want to look at it. There are 0 exceptions after the April 24th, but for electronic digital documents that were produced before April 24th, as long as they're not used to apply for, gain access to, or participate in a UMB service program or activity, you will have time to address those. Those do not fit in the DOJ have provided exemptions for those. We're not telling you don't do anything about them, but have long-term plans to address those, okay? We're not going to get in trouble by the April 24th deadline for anything that is not used. So anything that is used to apply for, gain access to, or participate in a UMB service program activity has to be remediated. And to remediate, you could either make the PDF accessible. Our recommendation a lot of times is to convert that document into web content. The university websites are built to be accessible. We have our templates and the whole infrastructure made in a way that when you enter content into the content management system, use Terminal 4 for that, it will be accessible. You'll need to take care of a few things, like if you have an image, add alt text for it. But in a general sense, if you can convert your documents to web content, that's the best approach. For archives, we have very specific guidelines for what qualifies as an archive. It's obviously something that's not used to participate in a UMB activity. It can be archived, and it has to be done in a certain way. So those documents, you can archive them and leave them. Or if it's not necessary to be on the website, delete them. Those are a few different ways that you can address those.
And this is Charles Shilley from OCPA. Just to jump in for the social media part, it's probably one of the most confusing part of the guidelines because there's a lot of logic tree involved of if, when, then this, then. So I would say I'll put in the chat have a checklist on there to kind of help you with social media accessibility and identifying those high-risk content items for video, especially, which, content before the 24th in general doesn't have to be remediated for social media unless it's actively promoting access to a program, service, or activity after that deadline. So, for example, if you posted something today about an event happening May 1st for an open house or a fair or a health fair or something like that, it should be remediated and fully accessible. And what does that mean? Well, it depends on the platform, and point toward the link that I shared in the chat and for more. If you have questions, feel free to reach out.
Hey, Charles, related to that, I want to bring in Nancy Lerner. She has a question about whether media is accessible. Nancy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
The question I have is about videos, and specifically videos like TED Talks, that we sometimes use because these people are experts in various fields that we want people to look at. Do we have to do anything with them to make them accessible, or do we have to get rid of them?
Depends on the context they're being used in. So
they're in classrooms, online classes.
Yeah, my expertise is within the staff realm, but I'll defer to our faculty, but I believe the answer is yes. They have to be remediated.
Yeah, I would say Becky or Shannon, do you feel able to field that question?
Yeah, I can answer that one. If it is a video that you are using in an online classroom or even in an LMS for a blended classroom, and it
Mhm.
is required for students to participate in an instructional activity, then it does need to be accessible.
Okay. So we may have to get rid of some of them.
I would look at the resources on the websites that we've shared. Removing them is an option. There are also some instructions on creating what's called a conforming alternate version. And that would be
Okay.
another option when you're looking at third-party websites, third-party content, third-party videos.
Confirming alternate content.
Conforming alternate content.
Conforming. Thank
Conforming,
you.
yes, conforming.
I think Becky
I,
will put some, I
getting
think
lost
Becky
on
will,
my
terms.
C's.
yeah, Becky put it in the chat for you there.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much.
There are a number of questions about content that's produced elsewhere that we use, like this. Let me bring in Sarah Turner from our community engagement team. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Yeah, I have a question because we co-sponsor and partner with a lot of external organizations and like nonprofits, et cetera, on events. And I'm sure that a lot of other people do. And oftentimes they'll make the flyer and they'll send it to us, and we'll have someone from OCPA review, make sure the logo is right, et cetera. But how do we hold these standards when we have external partners creating flyers, or should we just go ahead and start producing all of the flyers ourselves? What is that going to look like?
I'll just answer from my library lens and some of my previous experience in this area. Community engagement is such an important thing that we are part of the community and not taking over something that the community values. So I think it's really important that you work with your partners to maybe show them some of the basics of what you would need for something to be accessible if you were going to post it online, or work with them on the remediation process. Because again, if you're going to post it on a UMB website, it will need to be accessible, right? So your community partner create a great image for an event that you're having, and now the expectation is that you're going to post it on the website from UMB. It would need to be compliant in that part. So again, talking to your teams to see, because there are some great built-ins for a lot of people are using Canva in the public realm, or they might be using they might have more expertise in this area than we give people credit for, right? So, talk to the folks that are creating these things, let them know that you're really hopeful that you need something to be accessible, give them some standards to work with. And then once you get something, if it's easy to remediate, it's something that I'll be working with my team on to make sure that we include that update. We remediate it if we have to for posting on our website. So those are just some tips that I've used in the past. And sometimes groups are very eager to learn this too, because just like I said, like this means that more people can access their content, more people might be able to come to their event, and they just didn't know how to use these kind of features. So you becoming an expert in this area, helping your community become an expert in this area, can go a long way for that community engagement aspect.
Several members of the audience are asking about funding. I know you haven't heard that one yet. Specifically, I have a couple in front of me here that ask, can you go into more detail regarding digital accessibility for live events? Can you provide an example? And what sources of funding are there for ASL interpreters? And what sources of funding are there for captioning services for videos? So do you want to talk about funding or tools that are available?
Alex, as I have said previously, I'm not an expert in all the areas, and actually Alex is somewhat of an expert in some of the tools that are out there for some of this. So I'll actually give you back the part about some of the tools that you use. You can share that, but I want to address the part about funding just so people can know. I did not have that in the slides, but the funding, sorry, there's another group that I'm on. The Title II Task Force has done many things, which include looking at the products that are out there and making recommendations, which have gone now to the Office of the Provost. So the Office of the Provost is aware of the tools that we would recommend and the cost for these tools, and what we're recommending across many different areas. So video and live captioning, I believe, is one area, but other tools are also included in that recommendation. One of the things that we were able to secure funding for include the expansion of the Equidox license. So I think that was mentioned in the chat, but if you are looking to remediate a PDF, the license for that product has been now extended to 10 users at one time. And that was something that we worked to make that recommendation to the task force. So your feedback is always very helpful so that we can give it to the provost and the funding team so that they can look at what we should invest in as a university and at a campus.
Emily, related to that funding, while you're talking about funding, I should have mentioned another question here, which is similar, which is about, we're not the only university in a system. We're in a system. Is there anything that's being done for all of the universities, or is every university going it alone? Does Towson have one answer and Frostburg has another, and College Park, or is there some kind of coordination planned?
That is a great question. And I would say that there is through the Kirwan Center and through the group at the University System of Maryland, we have a lot of the leaders in this area talking about their investments and what they are doing. Is there one strategy for the entire USM? The short answer I would have to say is no. Every university is doing something a little bit different, but we're all learning from one another, right? So we learned a lot from the UMBC and from Towson, and other universities are learning from us. Some, like Frostburg, they have very limited funding and capacity out there, and I would say that they're not anywhere near where some of us are, and we're lucky enough to be because we have such a wide network of people working on this together and looking at our colleagues, and that's why I direct you back to the accessibility hub from USM, because you can find out more about your colleagues there. Has there been a recommendation for additional funding from the state? I do not know at this level, but we continue to advocate for accessibility, as does the state. Of course, we want to make sure everyone has access to what they need. I would also say, just in the lines of funding, so I also cannot speak for the schools or for the units. So, talking at the centralized level, we have a request that's gone to the provost. I do not know how your deans at your schools have chosen to use their funding to support accessibility. I do not know that, and you might have more options in certain areas than others. I'm also, looking here in my unit, like how or what should I do with my budget to ensure that we have accessibility. So that might be different across the board as well. But at the university level, we're definitely trying to create some enterprise options and some gold standard, if you will, that or products or services that you can rely on, which if we are able to secure the tools, they would be posted on our digital accessibility website as well as other websites, but we're really trying to bring everything in there together. I know that many people didn't know about Equidox, right? It lived somewhere else on a different website, and now we're trying to make people more aware of these tools that they have access to. I mean, including the things like that are built into Microsoft Word, right? It's built in right there. You can start learning right away. Now, to the questions about the tools for videos, someone else is the expert on that. I am not.
Well, we can get into more of that in detail. I will say this, that our web accessibility website that you pointed out has in it very granular, sort of, how to make a Zoom meeting accessible, how to fix your closed captions in YouTube, which is actually easier than you would think. And we are we've got a proposal for how to make audio descriptive versions of videos through a third-party vendor. And there are ways you can do it directly, which are really not very difficult, which we'll be able to provide sort of step by step for people. I will say there was another question that's come up a couple of times related to what you just said, is about the digital accessibility team. Provost Roger Ward mentioned that in his email. Let me see if I can find Brittany Hopkins here, who's one of the people who asked about this. Brittany, are you there?
When you have a program that's about integrating like passions.
Brittany? Okay, well, she's not there. She wrote, who is the digital accessibility team? From Provost Ward's email, our digital accessibility team will host a series of workshops and drop-in hours this semester to support you in making your content more accessible. So, and she's not the only one who asked that. So who's that team? Do you know when there will be those sessions? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Brittany and others. I've also received that question directly. I would say that is the catch-all term that we're using for after the Title II task force is finished with their recommendations and their work. We'll be looking at the team of individuals, which may include ESD, like a lot of the folks you see on this call today, ESDS, FCTL, the library, SITS, OCPA coming together for some very specific webinars. So we kind of put together this interdepartmental cross-collaborative team to focus on accessibility. So I believe that is the focus of what the digital accessibility team will become after the Title II push is our goals and objectives from our charge are complete. We'll need to keep transitioning. As I've mentioned, Title II is one aspect, and the start of the remainder for us is to keep training and keep learning about digital accessibility. So we'll have to have some sessions about that, which we hope to schedule and that you will hear from us at the university level soon.
You know, the devil, as they say, is always in the details. Everybody has a different thing that they want to be sure is correct. I'm not even going to try to characterize this one. This is a complicated one. Sean Atkins, you have a question? Do you want to explain what your quandary is?
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay. But your quandary, you ought to be able to explain it.
All right, yeah. So I work on a website where we give the users the ability to dynamically generate various visualizations from data sets that they have. The idea is the users can select their own conditions for these plots, like the X and Y axes, and add other little touch-ups. And the result is you get a resulting plot, either like some SVG, like HTML-based plot, or you can get a image. And I guess my question extent relates to how far do we need to make these plot images or the plot result HTML WCAG compliant. And the reason why I ask is to me, these packages that I use and many of the other plotting packages do not seem to be WCAG accessible. And there's a point where, because we're dynamically generating the plot, you are now sort of interpreting the results in order to give the screen reader information, I guess. And I don't feel, as someone who is not from this scientific background, doesn't understand these data sets, I should not try to like interpret the data, through code. Does that make sense?
I think this is very specific. It would be helpful if we can take a look at an example of what a plot looks like and what it involves, and we can give you specific guidelines on that, like from reading and listening to what you're sharing. Your website,
I can always. I don't want to take up time here, but I can always meet with you separately, follow up if that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that since this was brought up, we have some specific instructions for what websites actually fall in the scope. I'm going to put a link in the chat. Based on the information here, it sounds like your service actually falls in the scope, but whether like the specific product that you're providing, like what are some of the ways to make sure that it follows the compliance? Because there are different requirements. For instance, we had some conversations about like CAD drawings. The way you make those accessible are very different than how you make an image accessible, right?
Exactly, yeah.
CADs you can't describe. And I have looked into like what are the actual requirements for a CAD and then shared with the group who were asking. So I would love to sit with you and have a conversation, look at what your product is and offer any guidelines that I could.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about publicly facing documents and media. And one of our attendees is asking, well, how do you define that? Is a SharePoint maintained by a particular team public facing? Does it need to maintain the same level of compliance for all its materials? What does public facing really mean?
And I think Amir's link that he just put in to the chat is going to answer that question a little bit more thoroughly. That one adds a little bit more nuance so that, but if it's, external facing, Amir.
Yeah, I mean, anything that is available to the public. Public doesn't mean UMB employees, right? So if it's SharePoint and open to only employees of the, that's not public. But anything that is available publicly, it's not password protected. It's covered. also anything student related, whether it's password protected or not, whether it's public or not, anything student related is also covered in Title II. Now, again, I want to really go back to say that is the minimum requirement. That's what the law requires, accessibility. That's a value that we're pursuing. We want to make all digital content accessible for people of all abilities, all audience groups. That's our long-term goal. Let's not lose sight of that. But the minimum requirement by the law for the April 24th is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned all audiences because we have several people who are asking about, we talk about students in the public. What about employees? And what about UMB's commitment to having an accessible environment to employees? And I realize that's not what's driving this exact process, but it's very important, right? So what guidance can you all lend or thoughts about our general tone of accessibility and what maybe we ought to all be doing?
I can add to that. So the university has been working to address web accessibility for several years now. We did create a web accessibility work group in 2018, and a campus-wide web accessibility policy was developed in 2019. So hopefully you've all had a chance to review that. But we are committed to making sure all our web publicly facing content is accessible to everybody and have been working for years to do that. The Title II law that DOJ passed 2 years ago focuses on, again, publicly facing content and expanded it to also include content for students. But that doesn't mean that we're going to ignore internally used content for faculty, staff, and employees. That's still important to the university as per our core values. And there are other laws through Title I and that ADA has passed that covers that. So we're not saying we're not going to do anything in regards to internal content. That is still important. But today we are focusing primarily on what Title II is regarding, and that is focusing on this deadline of the end of next month and what needs to be done to address the content that students and publicly facing content, as well as anything that provides services, programs, and information about events that the university is holding. Those are the things we really are trying to focus on with Title II.
Even that, like what's publicly facing, is more complicated than you would think. Heidi Angst, one of my colleagues from the School of Medicine. Heidi, are you there? You want to ask your question? It's a unique one. I hadn't thought of this. There's two Heidi Angst registered. I'm going to allow them both to talk. Hopefully, it's just one of them will talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, there you are.
Here I am. Yeah, I'm wondering about the TV screens that are throughout all the buildings.
Right.
And how you would deal with those, or what we should be doing with those.
They are publicly facing, right? I mean, they're giving people information who come to our buildings, I guess. So.
Yes, and I will tell you, in Title II Task Force, we've talked about this, and we're making progress in that fact. Maybe, Amir, we've got a plan?
Yeah, we do have a plan. They are in scope. We are working on providing we are implementing some technical ways of addressing the problem, which is we're going to provide an alternative way of accessing the same information that is on those digital displays in ways that are accessible. So there is a whole process that Trish's team is going through to build new technology in order to make those digital displays accessible.
Another nuanced thing, Cindy Schaefer, I'm going to bring in. She raises a question that's come up a number of times. Like, we talk about making something accessible. How accessible does it have to be? And Cindy, say it your way. What's your question? Cindy? All right, I'm going to have to say it her way. Well, she asked in the.
Sorry, I was double muted.
Yeah,
no,
go.
That's
go ahead.
pretty much it. I mean,
well, no, you have a good point. Go ahead and read what you wrote.
Yeah, so we have run some of our materials through the tools that are available, and we're getting scores that are pretty high, but not 100%. So is it 100% and nothing else complies, or is there a threshold value of some sort?
I can answer that. So the way these percentages are calculated are like very different across the different tools. Even in SelectTide that we use to monitor university websites and documents, the way scores are calculated for documents are different than how they're calculated for web pages. So for web pages, there isn't any, there's no 100%. We're not aiming for 100%. We want to follow WCAG 2.1 AA standards, which is what we're aiming for. And anything about 85, 90% is good. SelectTide would tell you what are the issues that you need to address. You want to make sure all the issues that are flagged as WCAG 2.1 AA are addressed. That's it. For documents, though, I saw your question, like PDFs, you want to be 100% accessible. The percentage is calculated very differently. Again, you want to run it based on WCAG 2.1 AA, and you want to make sure you're addressing all of those requirements. There is also an additional tool that we have very recently added to the accessibility website. It's called PDF Audit. It's an open source tool that you can use for documents. It can be a first check for documents that are not already on the website, because SelectTide can only scan things that are already posted. But if you have a document that you want to check, you can use PDF Audit. And my recommendation, we have a lot of content on the website in order to how to use it. Use it only to get a confirmation of whether this document is accessible or not. It will give you a lot of other information that are not actionable and might sound overwhelming if you look at it, but use it as just a check to see if it is accessible or not. Then use a remediation tool. So if it is accessible, great. If not, then you can use Ecodocs, or if you have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro, use that to remediate those documents. So for documents, you want to make sure they're 100%. But for web pages, no, there's no such a threshold. Anything above 85%, 90% is good, as long as you have addressed all the WCAG 2.1 AA flagged issues.
We overlook social media a little bit in this because we're thinking about students, which we should, but a lot of how we communicate, what we do is through social media, and there's so many different channels. Charles, do you want to describe it? How do you keep that straight? What should people be thinking about?
The easiest thing to do is to visit the link that I provided in the chat, because I have guidelines that break down each platform. And so essentially the guidelines say you have to be as accessible as the platform allows. And then can you provide another way to basically finish off your accessibility journey? And social media is one of the areas where the exception is allowed to provide an accessible version elsewhere on a different platform if you can't meet it there. So for example, if you're pointing people to register for an event or a link, on Instagram, you point them to your link in bio, where you're going to have a link to the event, or a landing page that creates more links to like the Elm website. If the fully accessible version lives on the Elm, that helps satisfy that. That's just one of probably dozens and dozens of examples. But overall for video, I would say, YouTube is going to be your accessibility home base, where it has the most features for accessibility, your audio description tracks, your ability to upload an extended audio description video if needed, and to have fully compliant closed captioning, where you can direct people to the YouTube channel for those alternative versions.
All right, that's great. Emily, I have one here that's directed squarely at you. I see you're sitting down, so that's okay. So you're ready for this one. This anonymous attendee writes, our biggest pain point is journal articles in the library. What changes will be happening with our library database selection to ensure that we can send students to accessible articles?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. That's one of the reasons why there is so much desire to learn more about digital accessibility and think about this from the library perspective. I don't have an easy answer for that. There's not a clear-cut solution, but I am talking, and within the library here, we have two groups. We also have a Title II task force in the library. And then I also have, and we've had for quite a while, like Tricia mentioned, we've had an accessibility committee that's always interested in accessibility topics. So that, along with some of our employees that are really engaged with our resources, our journals, our collections, and interlibrary loan as well, we're looking into how we can ensure that our students get the accessible content they need. One of the things I will mention is that at this point, with our agreements with our vendors, those have to be reviewed as well. I know that we've brought this to General Counsel's attention, but I just want to assure everyone in one regard that we're not going to cancel one of our big journal packages because of this. We are going to be working with them. We're going to be working as well, looking at what kind of levels of employment and things like that we need to focus people on remediated documents here in the library when necessary. So for anybody who's teaching a class, I highly recommend, and this is a thing that we don't know in libraries, we typically want to help everyone get access to anything and everything. If you are teaching a class and using something for a class reading, please talk to your liaison librarian. Let them know that this is happening and that's why you are requesting that reading, so that we can work to ensure that we get you an accessible copy or that we get you something that has the HTML reader version. For students that are coming to the library, we do intend, and this is actually our unofficial, my team just reminded me, this is our unofficial accessibility week. Everyone in my library is learning more about accessibility this week. But we do intend to do a little bit more, I believe, with communicating with students to let them know what kind of things we can do to help them with accessibility. And I believe we've also added a way for interlibrary loan, which is primarily unmediated. It's going out and getting things and bringing it to you without a human interacting with it. We've added a little checkbox now, I believe, or we will be doing soon, that you can indicate this is for a class use, or this is, for a student. I need it accessible, so that you can make that request. And then it will be on my staff to work at making it accessible for that purpose. So we're looking at workflows entirely here. And I don't have an exact answer for you yet, but we're continuing to look into it to ensure this accessibility of all of our content.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it was. Someone in this group made the point in an earlier meeting, so pardon me for not remember who it was, that, a big part of creating an accessible environment is wanting to do it, thinking about doing it, knowing that you don't know everything and being sensitive. There's a question here which doesn't exactly deal with some of the issues we're talking about, but I'm going to read it to you because it sort of is a reminder to us. This person wrote, "It would be great for the presenters on this call to model accessibility for folks with low vision or blindness by describing their appearances when introducing themselves." And it made me think, should we have guidelines for when we do presentations or town halls or whatever it happens to be? What are the guidelines? What should we be doing to try to be the most accessible for everyone in the audience?
I do. I appreciate that question. I think it's really important as we think about the way we are going to be transitioning our work practices or our thoughts around this to be more inclusive. I think Amir brings up a really good point, which is there is the legal component of this, the requirements of what Title II is telling the University of Maryland, Baltimore it must conform to and do. And then there is the next level, which is how do we embrace our core values and start modeling this behavior and bringing it in. And, I would welcome a guide so that we have those kind of things out there, and people that are having webinars can begin, taking these things under consideration as they create their content or host a webinar like this. So I appreciate that question. And I think that it's more for us all to learn and more for us all to do, to work together. Because again, no one's going to be the expert in all things accessibility. We have to rely on one another, and we have to rely on our resources and support system in order to ensure that our students and our public facing materials become accessible. And then some of us are going to have interests that go beyond that, and we're going to do more and learn more. And we may be providing more information to our colleagues because of our growing expertise in this area.
Yeah, I know we're almost out of time, but Cindy Schaefer, who we heard from a little while ago, had another question here. I'm gonna read this. It's a good point. She says, "Of course, I understand that we are all caps, responsible for making everything fully accessible, I'm still fuzzy on who's responsible for what when it comes to going through existing website pages, those that can't be archived. So in other words, there's a lot to do here. I know we're all part of the solution, I should say. But what does that really mean? What do we need to do?
It's much easier when it comes to websites. Websites that are in Terminal 4, accessibility is addressed on the template level. Those are not actually a big hurdle. The biggest challenge are documents, PDF documents in particular. For web content, as long as you enter them using the content types that are available and add appropriate alt text and things like that, you're fine. Anything else, we have plenty of guidelines on the website and resources, and our teams are available to answer any questions if you need help with any aspects of that.
Okay. This is a good question. Just for me personally, I'd like to know the answer to this. Someone says, is as of April 24th, are links shared in Zoom supposed to be descriptive text? What's the answer to that?
I'm gonna have to guess no, because I don't think it allows you to do that.
I think it doesn't too, yeah.
Yeah, so again, this goes to that what Charles said, like as accessible as the platform is enabled. So, if you're this is my guidance, not knowing if it will actually allow you to do descriptive links in there. But if you're posting a link in the chat, you could say, this link will go to the UMB Digital Accessibility website, paste link. That could be a potential. I also am not familiar as how Zoom interacts with screen readers, etc. So that is one of the big purposes of the links being descriptive, is so that screen readers will read the link information to the person versus not reading that and reading click here, and they're not really sure where here is, right? So those are some things that might be important for us all to learn about the platform. But really, when we're talking about websites or in documents that are digital documents, we want to make sure we're using those descriptive links.
All right, since I already allowed the two Heidi aunts to talk, one of them I'm now told is Mike Caffey's. Mike, do you want to ask your question?
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Heidi kind of brought me in last minute.
No, that's all
And
right.
I just want to put this forward is that I am at the Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling. And I wanted to point this out. We are in a very unique position in our program because our two front-facing websites to the public, both in professionals and for the public for problem gamblers, um, are not on the university servers. And in no way do I think that precludes us from needing to, be compliant. In no way, please don't think that. What I'm trying to say is I think that we may have fallen through the cracks in this entire process. And the anxiety of, my gosh, this is like happening in a month. And we haven't even like taken a first step for some things. And we also do things like trainings. We do a lot of public facing and what do you call it? Social media and other comms related things. I'm the only person out of 14 members on my staff. So I think I just wanted to put this out here that we're going to need some, maybe some special meetings to sort of develop a plan and sort of help us through this. I know that it sounded at first like it was going to be moving forward, but I know that there's going to have to be a lot of remediated things on our sites because we do have a lot of front-facing stuff for the public. So.
So what I can offer is, by all means, we can include you in the university's accessibility monitoring system. Please feel free to reach out to me. We'll make sure your website's included so that you can monitor the accessibility, get reports, find out what are the various specifics that you need to do in order to comply by the deadline. And based on what needs to be fixed, we can provide guidance and help you with the process of what are the different things and what resources are out there for you to use.
Well, yeah, Amir, yeah, thank you. And let me just point out, our two websites are third-party vendor maintained, and we obviously I meet with them on a regular basis, and we we talk about, all the changes we need. So, and they know that I was coming to this meeting and all, so we'll definitely sort of start that. I may be in touch with you though to help me, mediate and intermediate with this process. So,
Absolutely.
And just to follow up with that, so since this is a website that's developed by a third party, you might want to discuss what your current agreement was with procurement to see whether it included a clause or statement saying that their content had to be web accessible. And that is why the procurement process was updated in the fall to be more comprehensive so that it includes reviews not only from the school and IT departments, but also security compliance and digital accessibility to make sure that any contracts that the university makes for purchasing any kind of software, applications, third-party agreements, developing websites by outside companies, that all of those are adhering to all of the standards and requirements that the university needs to follow. So again, you might want to follow up with procurement to make sure that that was adhered to.
yep, sure will do. We also purchase a lot of advertising around some digital advertising. Is there anything that I need to know about that as far as we're just doing banner ads mostly on people's, on other websites and things, but I don't
We're going to
know
have to give a very quick answer since I know we're over time right now.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, Mike. The quick answer is what can you do for digital advertising?
I have to talk OCPA folks. I don't know the answer
We'll
to that.
have to try to find that out for you,
Okay.
Mike. Since we
Yeah,
meet
sorry.
regularly, I'll try to figure out an answer for him.
Do I at least win a prize for stumping the group?
Okay.
Thank you.
Emily?
Okay, there we go. I want to thank the panelists today and all the wonderful questions that came in. I know that there are even more questions, and this may have raised more questions for you. So if you will, please obviously refer to our website that we've talked about multiple times, and don't hesitate to reach out to our Title II task force individuals, panelists that are here, or your instructional technologists, educational technologists in your schools, because they are also resources for you. So again, this is everyone's responsibility, but in no way do I think that anyone needs to be working on this alone. I do believe that together we are making a lot of improvements. We're embracing our core values, and we're really helping University of Maryland, Baltimore be a leader in this accessibility space. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud of all of the effort that's going into this. So thank you for continuing to surface areas of concern, areas of questions, and also being so willing to make this an important part of the next process that you have for your work and everything that you do here at UMB. Thank you.
On that note, good afternoon, everyone, and this will be posted soon. Not immediately, but in a couple of days. We will definitely have it up for you if you want to review. Take care.